Imagine an army so vast that if you stood at the very back, you wouldn't even be able to see where it began. Now imagine that this army wasn't just a line of soldiers, but an entire city on the move. A city with smoke rising from field kitchens, tents being dismantled at dawn, medics tending to wounds, engineers hauling tools, and merchants selling bread and wine in the middle of the march. This was not just an army. It was Rome in motion. In this journey, you'll step inside the living machine of a Roman legion on the march, hour by hour, step by step. And by the end, you may find yourself wondering, could you survive even a single day among them? Before we understand how a Roman march worked, we need to confront the scale of it, and the numbers are staggering. During the height of the empire, a typical Roman force might include 2 full legions, around 13,000 to 14,000 highly trained soldiers. But they never marched alone. Alongside them came 5,000 to 6,000 auxiliary troops, Numidian cavalry, Syrian archers, Germanic warriors, and slingers from Hispania. These were not Roman citizens, but they fought for Rome, earning pay and the promise of citizenship. That alone brings the total close to 20,000 armed men. Now add the invisible workforce, 3,000 to 4,000 cooks, servants, laborers, and support staff. They cared for animals, repaired weapons, prepared food, and carried out the daily work that kept the army alive. And then there were the animals. Between 4,500 and 5,000 mules carried supplies, each loaded with up to 130 kilograms, tools, rations, weapons, even dismantled siege machines. Add horses, carts, merchants, guides, and messengers. And suddenly, you're looking at a moving population of 25,000 to 30,000 living beings. Men, animals, steel, fire, movement. The ancient historian Polybius once described it as a moving wall of flesh, and he wasn't exaggerating. A Roman column could stretch 8 to 12 kilometers along the road. The front might be crossing a river while the rear was still packing up camp. So the question becomes, how do you move something this massive every single day without it collapsing into chaos? The answer begins before sunrise. Between 3 and 4 in the morning, while the world was still asleep, the Roman march had already begun. The first to move were the scouts, the speculatores, elite riders who advanced ahead of the army, scanning the land for danger. They searched for ambushes, monitored enemy movement, and ensured the road ahead was safe. Back in camp, soldiers were already awake. A short blast from a horn signaled the start of the day. No shouting, no confusion. Every man knew his role. In groups of 8, called a contubernium, they dismantled tents, packed equipment, checked weapons, and prepared for the march. Each soldier carried everything he needed: weapons, armor, tools, food, even wooden stakes for building fortifications, up to 30 kilograms on his back. They weren't just soldiers. They were builders, engineers, and survivalists. As dawn approached, the army began to move. At the front marched the vanguard, a fast, deadly mix of cavalry, archers, and light infantry. Their job was to face danger first, clearing the path and detecting threats before they reached the main force. Behind them came the surveyors. These specialists didn't fight, they planned. Hours ahead of the army, they chose where the next camp would be built. The ground had to be perfect, dry, elevated, near water, and defensible. A bad campsite could mean disaster. At the center of the column moved the command. The general and his officers didn't lead from the front. They controlled from within. Orders traveled through mounted messengers, moving constantly between units. Everything was calculated. Everything was controlled. Then came the heart of the legion, the main body. Thousands of soldiers marching in disciplined silence, veterans at the front, new recruits protected in the middle, and the less reliable troops kept under watch at the rear. They marched in narrow lines, adapting to terrain, through forests, valleys, and mountains. Each day they covered 20 to 30 kilometers. Not faster, not slower. Precision mattered more than speed. Behind them rolled the lifeline of the army, the baggage train. Hundreds of animals and carts carrying food, tools, weapons, medicine, and supplies. Without it, the army couldn't survive. But it was also the most vulnerable part of the column. If it fell, everything fell. At the very rear marched the rear guard, silent, watchful, deadly. Their job was to protect against surprise attacks from behind, capture deserters, and prevent panic. Because in a column this large, even a small disruption could cause total collapse. History had already proven that. When Roman legions were ambushed in the forests of Germania, they were destroyed, not by lack of strength, but by loss of order. Rome never forgot that lesson. Meanwhile, along the sides of the column, hidden in forests and hills, moved the flank guards. They were the unseen protectors, scouts and cavalry who watched for danger from the sides, where the army was most exposed. They moved farther, slept less, faced the unknown first, because one mistake on the flank could open a deadly gap. And then, as the sun began to fall, the army stopped. But the day wasn't over. In just a few hours, they built a fortified camp from scratch. A ditch, a wall, gates, streets, tents, everything. Every soldier became a builder again. And before night fully arrived, the army had transformed the open land into a secure fortress. But even at night, Rome never truly slept. Guards rotated in strict shifts. Passwords were checked. Silence was enforced. Food was simple. Work continued. Wounds were treated, equipment repaired, and discipline remained absolute. Because in the Roman army, survival didn't depend on strength. It depended on order. What looked like a simple march was actually a masterpiece of coordination, a moving city, a living machine, a system so precise, so relentless, that it allowed Rome to conquer the world, not just with force, but with discipline. So now, after walking beside them for a day, ask yourself, could you endure it for a week?